And most of what I remember is the way that firefighter made me feel inside for the moment of in the midst of all the chaos, in the midst of all the transition and change that was happening. He was able to bring peace in a way that I guess a 6-year-old boy really needed at that moment. And I'll never forget that. And that peace that he was able to bring to me during that time. And he really, Brian, he didn't spend much time with me. I mean, you know how the job is. You can't just sit with people for a long time. You got a lot going on. But he did. He made a choice to basically put down his assignment, and he stayed with me, and he brought a sense of peace that I'll never forget. I really believe that planted the seed.
And you just heard a short clip from an interview that I had with a dear friend, Mick Moffitt, on episode 23 of the 318 Project.
This is the 318 Project, a guide to equip men through godly principles and develop as husbands, fathers, and sons. And now, your host, Ryan Hare.
Hello, I'm Ryan Hare, and welcome to the 318 Project. And today, I would like to welcome to this episode of the 318 Project a good friend. He's a fellow firefighter and a fellow commissioned brother, Mick Moffitt. Hey, Mick, how you doing today?
Hey, Brian. Doing good, man. Doing good. How's things in Florida? Sunny Florida today?
It's sunny and a little cool.
Sunny and cool. That's about like Texas.
Yeah. So I would love to have you introduce yourself to my audience and just kind of give them a brief introduction of who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So like you said, my name is Mick Moffitt. I'm 50 years old, have a family, been married for 21 years. Got 3 awesome kids, all the way from 10 years old to 27 almost now. Wow, man. That's crazy to think about. One of them lives in Los Angeles, but the other 2 are still here at home in the good land of Texas. But, you know, I like yourself, Ryan, I had a dream of firefighting. You know, it probably came to me with a little bit of purpose behind it, which we can get into a little bit later. But I've really enjoyed a lifetime of just serving in that capacity, man. You know, it's hard to explain that sometimes to just anyone, how you feel inside when you are called to something like this. But yeah, most of my life I've spent in some capacity trying to obtain that dream. You know, I volunteered for several years before I ever was able to make it a career. I probably would have done it for free, regardless, either way, but it was nice getting a paycheck for it for a while.
Right.
But, you know, I guess it was probably about, it was more than halfway through my career where I really started. There was just a passion inside of me to preserve some of the culture. And I guess what I mean by that is I started to see some of maybe the honor aspect of it all, I don't even know really how to explain it, but that brotherhood mentality was slipping away a little bit. And that's what really attracted me to begin with. So, man, I guess it was a little over halfway through my career. I really thought, how could I make a difference in that category or in that aspect? And what a better way than training, right? Getting a hold of the new guys and trying to plant some character traits in them early and see if we can't keep this thing rolling. So I moved into training full time, and that's where I'm currently at now.
Yeah. And like I said, we'll get into a lot more of that later. So growing up, did you grow up in Texas? Where'd you originally grow up at?
So my early years, I was actually born in Hagerstown, Maryland, just outside of Baltimore. So I'm a Yankee by heart, man, but I got down south as quick as I could.
Yeah, it's not too bad because my dad's from Baltimore. So
hey, well, that's not bad, man. Not at all. I got down here in elementary school, and you know what brought us down here was a pretty tragic incident. When I was 6 years old, our house caught on fire. Actually, I was on the other side of the ladder, as I like to say. But my dad, along with a couple firemen, you know, were able to get my sister and I out of that fire, and it did something in me that night, Ryan. I can't really explain what was planted inside of me, but there was something there that really made a difference and really began to steer the course of my life. But that was kind of how we got down here. My dad, I'm going to be very transparent if we can. I think we can. Your audience is probably pretty genuine, so let's just talk.
Yeah, and that's and that's what I love is I love, and that's what I try to emphasize with myself is that being transparent and authentic, that people can just understand where we're coming from, because, there's so many that want to kind of put up that little facade of being tough and strong, and they really don't share the struggles they've been with. And that's, definitely I want to be able to be transparent. And so I'm all for that.
Awesome, man. Well, looking back now, I see what my dad was going through, and he had just lost the love of his life. My mom didn't make it out that night. She actually died in that fire, and I know he was just broken. So he needed a restart, and we moved down here to Texas, and he went to work for James Robinson Ministry and to start out, and that's kind of how we ended up here.
Wow. So growing up, you kind of had even with all that, you still had a background of growing up in church.
Yes, I did. It was a following Dad's God mentality. I mean, I knew the God that Dad served because obviously he was very passionate about it, but it wasn't until very later in life that I was able to acquire that same relationship, if that makes sense.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. We all think, a lot of us, growing up as kids, we kind of live under our parents' covering. And even as we get older, probably in our teenagers, we probably have experienced a little bit of a personal salvation, but we still kind of feel like we're under our parents.
Yeah.
And when we get older, then we realize, hey, I have to have that personal relationship. So yeah.
It just doesn't work any other way, man. And it wasn't that I was trying to resist anything, but I was very confused too. And, broken family right off the bat, things changed for us, a lot of trauma involved there. And it just, it's tough to recover from. I can tell you that.
Right. Oh, loss of any loved one, it definitely makes it a tough situation. So again, you said that was when you were about 6 that your mom passed away. And you said there was a couple of firemen. Now, was that what kind of motivated you to want to grow up and be a fireman, or was that kind of later on?
Man, I think that's what planted the seed. So I do remember bits and pieces of that night that are pretty straightforward. I can see some pretty good images of that night. And most of what I remember is the way that firefighter made me feel inside for the moment of all, in the midst of all the chaos, in the midst of all the transition and change that was happening. He was able to bring peace in a way that I guess a 6-year-old boy really needed at that moment. And I'll never forget that. And that peace that he was able to bring to me during that time. And he really, Ryan, he didn't spend much time with me. I mean, you know how the job is. You can't just sit with people for a long time. You got a lot going on. But he did. He made a choice to basically put down his assignment, and he stayed with me, and he brought a sense of peace that I'll never forget. I really believe that planted the seed. Yeah.
And that's great. Sometimes, like I said, we as firefighters on the job, we don't realize the effect that we have on people's lives. Sometimes there's a positive, and sometimes, unfortunately, there is some negative effects. But the fact that, especially for Christian men and women that are on the job, of being able to comfort during that time of a loss or a situation. So it's tough. Sometimes you don't have the right words to say, but all you can do is be there and kind of comfort, if, again, within reason. But the fact that he did that, made such an impact on your life is great.
Yeah, man. I'm being real with you. We go on calls all day long, and everything is 911 to us. But you can get in a routine, man, and you can get to the place where you just want to get through the run, and you just want to get over with, and you just want to keep moving. But this guy knew, and he told me later in life, we'll get to it a bit, but he did mention he knew that my life would never be the same. And if all he had to do was spend some time with me to make a difference, he said it was worth it.
Well, that's great. It's powerful. So again, with growing up, now, how did your dad transition? Because you talked a little bit about this, it was, again, that time of recovery. How did your dad then move on with the loss of your mom and all that, how, I know it probably took some time, but going through that transition, how was it for not just him, but for you as a family during that time?
Oh man, it was organized chaos all the time. You're talking about a guy, just took on 2 kids by himself. My dad was a blue collar man. He worked at the GM plant in Maryland. I mean, he was just the all around man's man. And for him to take on that motherly role was extremely difficult for him. Looking back now, I understand that. But he did the best he could, man. He loved us, and he never abandoned us, so to speak, at all. I think that what he did, though, Ryan, is he really buried himself in ministry in other men that helped bring him to a place where he could function normal again, if there is a normal after something like that. But I really believe if it wasn't for some of the men in his life and where God brought him to some of those relationships, it would have been a much different story.
Right. Oh yeah, probably. Yeah, more than likely. Because I think even, we've, again, with what we do with Dr. Cole ministry and the books and all that, I think there's that part that he talks about, when somebody loses a spouse, sometimes those people they can't transition to that next level. And it's not so much that you're trying to forget that person, but some people just can't get past that, and to the point that they just kind of give up on life themselves and they don't progress and move on. So the fact that, like you said, that he had men that he could lean on and kind of, help him get through that time, and then continue to be there for you and your sister is definitely inspiring as a man, to, like you said, just that loving blue collar guy.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. He did. You mentioned Dr. Cole. So after we did move here to Texas, he worked for James Robinson for a while. And I believe that's where he met Dr. Cole. And I want to say my dad was Dr. Cole's first employee. He actually transitioned from James Robinson's ministry over to Dr. Cole's ministry when they launched that. Wow. And so I believe that he was in the very infant stages of a lot of what Dr. Cole did there. And that as well as I do, that's what really began to rebuild his life.
Right. Oh yeah. Because we both know how it's impacted our lives.
Absolutely.
With all the books and the Coleisms and just how it really speaks to you as a man of what it takes to really be a godly man in this society today that people look at as different.
Yes. Yeah. And just the camaraderie too of the other guys involved,
Right. So again, with your dad really kind of devoting that time, how did that affect you growing up, going through that situation as well?
So I chose a different route, man. I got mixed up. Now, what does happen when you're a single parent is you don't have 4 sets of eyes on your kids. You've got 2. So he was pretty wrapped up in trying to make a living, pretty wrapped up in trying to rebuild his life, trying to take care of us. And I slipped into the wrong crowd and chose a whole different route. I chose a route of just trying to escape from reality altogether. And so, running with the wrong guys, doing drugs, just trying to do what I could to, at that time, just survive. You get to this place where even if you can escape for 30 or 40 minutes, it's worth it. You think it is anyway, right? Oh, yeah. Until the next day and you wake up and it's still there. But I rode that train for quite a while until I believe it was a lot of praying for my dad and a lot of other events that happened that brought me out of that. But that was the beginning stages.
Okay. So what then prompted you to, like you said, you kind of did some volunteer. So around what age and all that did you start really getting involved with wanting to become a firefighter?
So what's crazy about my life is I kind of let that dream slip away for a while. I thought, my past is not good. I have things on my record now. There's just no way to accomplish this. So I went on to become the bud man. I thought, well, I'll just deliver beer and I can it's my favorite thing to do anyway, is to drink beer. So why not just deliver it too? And so I went into working for Budweiser for a while, which what the awesome thing that came out of that is that's where I met my wife, was actually at the airport at the Admirals Club. She was a bartender at the Admirals Club, and I was the Bud man. So it's funny how God works, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, it wasn't until later in life, Ryan, it wasn't until my late 20s before I ever sat down in a fire station and interviewed, man.
Wow.
My wife was really a big support in saying, when we got together, she was like, hey, you need to pursue this, you can do this. And so she helped me with that.
Okay. So with that, how long did you work on the fire department, and have you retired?
Well, no, actually I took an early retirement. I resigned. I actually was at the fire department for about 17 years, and I resigned early, took out an early retirement, and I decided to go into training. I had this real passion, Ryan, to give back to this next generation. And I don't want that to sound like I'm this ultimate saint, because that's not why. It's just I was very performance driven, especially at that time. I still had a lot to prove. Even after we really begin to know God in a way for ourselves, even after we begin to really have that relationship with him, there are still things inside of us that need tended to. And I was a very performance-driven person. I needed acceptance. And the way I got acceptance was succeeding. So after moving up through the ranks and becoming into chief officer ranks and all that, it really started to get to a place where I needed a reboot. I needed to do more. I'm going to be honest with you, Ryan. I wasn't getting noticed like I used to. I wasn't getting the attention I used to. And so I would love to sit here and say, hey, it's out of the greatness of my heart that I started this training endeavor. But at first, it was because of me. It was all because of me. God used that and showed me where those wounds were later in life, and I dealt with that. But at first, it was honestly because I needed more for me.
Well, yeah, a lot of times, we have that image, firefighters kind of have that image of the glory and that hero mentality of, being on the front page or in the news or something a lot of times. But most of us, most of the time it's the stuff that's not seen. But again, a lot of people just inside of you want to get that recognition of good job, way to go. And that goes back to anything, even growing up, with getting that approval and that affirmation from a parent is, just a big part.
That's it, buddy. And my dad was a great man, but he wasn't that good job kind of guy. That's a lot of a mother's role, right? Is to always be there and tell her son how well he's doing. And so not having that growing up since I was 6 years old, I had to get that elsewhere. And so I looked anywhere I could for it.
Right. And that's, I think, anybody in life, wherever they're at, especially as a teenager or young person, they're always looking for some kind of affirmation and feeling wanted and appreciated. And like I said, as you get older, even once you get into your having your own family, you're even expecting some of that back on you from your kids and your wife. And so, yeah, definitely it's learning to play that balance.
Yeah, you're right.
And so you said you kind of did that early retirement, resigning. And again, it was for reasons of the training school.
Yes,
now looking back with your career, with today's society, we're seeing a lot more men, people on the job that have been struggling. Unfortunately, we see a lot of suicide and addictions to that. Were there any struggles, issues that you had to deal with, even kind of looking back now that you've had to deal with from your firefighting career?
Oh, absolutely. So when I left the fire department, I left with a mentality that, okay, this is the next step. This is what I'm going to do. This is a great move. Little did I know, as I walked out that door, I was going to leave my identity there as well. And when I left, Ryan, my identity stayed at the fire department, and I was lost for a year, a good year. I had no confidence. I had, I was used to be called by my rank. I wasn't that anymore. It was rough, buddy. I mean, I had everything. Little did I know, I had everything wrapped up in being a firefighter. I mean, that was everything to me. And what it did, Ryan, honestly, is it caused me to go down the same path for a short time, just in a legal way, And what I mean by that is I started seeing doctors because I was having health issues. I was getting prescriptions for things that are basically just mind altering. Let's take your mind off of your reality for a while. It was no different than my path as a kid.
Right.
So there was definitely an issue that was taking place from way back when that was never dealt with.
Yeah. Like I said, because, even for me, seeing some of the struggles and even having some of my personal issues that we've talked about before in some previous episodes of, you seeing things and you thinking, hey, that's not really going to affect me. But then all of a sudden you go to another call, or even not even being at work, and you come across something, you see something, and it just triggers those emotions. And like you said, sometimes it's like, well, how do I get through these feelings? And, we go, a lot, like you said, you go to a doctor and they'll be like, well, we'll give you something just to ease the stress, and, you're depressed and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of guys that they take another route to coping, through alcohol and even drugs. And that's kind of, the struggle we're seeing a lot in society today with that. So again, just being able to recognize that and work past it, that's great. That's awesome.
Well, I knew this road. Here was the problem: is I knew this road, and it was very familiar to me, but I didn't know how to get off of it, and I did not understand what is going on. I was a sold out believer, man. I loved Jesus with all my heart, and I thought all that was taken care of, man. I thought we were good on that end. But when I left the fire department, there was a wound that was exposed that had never been dealt with.
Right.
So it led me on about a 3-year journey, Ryan, to freedom and understanding really how to be free, and not just in my intimacy with God, but also cleansing my soul of all the trauma, all the stuff from the past and all that junk. And it was a good 3-year journey I took, Ryan, through different programs and different ministries, and getting to a point where I could actually say I know who I am today.
Right. That's great. So like you said, your dad kind of then transitioned from working with James Robinson to then kind of helping start the Dr. Cole ministry. And like I said, we're familiar with the Dr. Cole and the books and all that. How did that material impact your life?
Man, it was amazing. I remember as a kid being in a hotel room with Dr. Cole. It was at the La Mansion Hotel in San Antonio, and we were in his room. And I'll never forget, he had this cool Walkman radio. And back then, it was a big old brick, had a cassette in it, these big old phones. And I just couldn't take my eyes off of it. And he noticed, and he looked at me and he said, do you like this? And I said, yes, sir. He said, I tell you what, I'll give it to you if you listen to the cassette that's inside it. And I said, you bet. So I took it as a kid, and I took that cassette out and threw it in my desk drawer and put some Metallica or something in there. And I never listened to that thing for years. But you know what showed up later in life when I was cleaning some stuff out was that cassette, man. And it was Maximize Manhood. It was a teaching on Maximize Manhood. And I remember listening to that and thinking, man, this is where my identity is. This was the missing link of what will help me put the two things together.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. Cause that kind of even like with our start with a lot of it was, my dad finding the book, the old small blue Maximize Manhood book that he had from 20 years ago, and just looking for that information of how to, other information to help the men at the church that we were a part of at the time. And just from there, finding all the other books and that he had actually written the curriculum. And what's funny is he actually did have some old videos of some of the conferences that Dr. Cole did. He's like, but they were bootlegged because somebody had made a copy from, I guess, when they did their televising. So he kind of had these bootlegged versions.
Yeah.
Of Dr. Cole. But that was what he showed to the men, and we just loved it, and kind of fell in love with that. I was like, okay, this is authentic, and this is somebody that's telling you the truth and backing it with biblical kingdom principles.
Yes,
that spoke to your life, and that was just what made a lot of the impact on me as well.
Yeah, what attracted me the most, Ryan, to Dr. Cole's literature and his just way of expressing himself was that he was so incredibly raw on the inside. It was all the elephants in the room that I never faced. It was like all those things that you think, man, I'm the only guy that ever thinks this way. They were all in there. And I wasn't the only guy that thought that way. And that was so relieving to me just to know that much, that there are other people that have been through this and they came through this. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And like I said, that just, again, how it impacts lives, not just that person's life, but the whole family, because once they see a change, then it inspires the family as well to grow. And that was what was so beneficial to us. Was it didn't just save my life in a sense, it saved my marriage and it saved my family, and just being able to grow from it and use it from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. My wife, she, when we were married, she inherited a 5-year-old boy with that. He came with me. So we had a blended family going through all this transition and all this stuff that I was trying to find out about myself. And, my son at the time was a bit upset too about his situation with his real mother. And, it was just so much going on. I needed something to bring some stability. And, I never really knew which side to take this way. But all the answers were basically in a lot of that curriculum, along with just the word itself. And it's what helped us get to a place where we could actually function and then start building upon, that solid foundation. But the foundation was finding my identity. I had to figure out, okay, I'm definitely not this. Firefighting is not my identity. What is?
Right.
It wasn't until I truly, when you grow up in an environment that I grew up in, and don't get me wrong, my dad did the very best he could with what resources he had, but without a mom and all. When you grow up in that environment, it just, you don't have that sonship. You don't understand really what it is like to be a son, and you don't understand really what it's like to have both parents from both sides, right, on that. Right. So that had to be relearned, and I had to relearn that through the gospel, man.
Yeah. And like I said, it's trying to find that identity, and a lot of times, that's what we're looking for, is what identifies us. And like I said, it's either sometimes it's through a career, a job, an accomplishment, or an achievement. Even in our spouse and our kids, we identify a lot of times through them, but we don't really realize who our identity is in Christ. And in finding that, like I said, it takes that time to get in the Word and really seek to learn what our identity truly is. That it's not just a status of society.
Yeah, that's good, man. And that's hard to put into words. You have to experience it. But you're right. If you put your identity in a substance, in something tangible, if that's taken away from you, then what are you going to do? And that's kind of where I was, is I put everything, all my eggs were in the firefighter basket. And so when I walked away from the job itself, even though I was entering into training and still in the industry, it was different. And with all that, without having that, man, I just was lost. I didn't know who I was. But now I'm at a point through all this. And see, what I didn't tell you in your audience earlier is that my dad, was in a fatal car accident when I was 15 years old. So from 15 to today, I had no parents. So that changes the whole dynamic a little bit more to where I am today. But man, finding my identity, and what I mean by that is knowing that I am a loved son, changed everything for me, man.
Right. I'm sure because, like you said, here you are as a teenager, you've lost both your parents to a tragedy in both incidents. I'm sure there was a lot of resentment towards even God during that time of how could you allow this to happen to my parents and stuff, right?
Yeah, there was a phase of that for sure. And then just, do I really want to believe any of this is real? I mean, do I want to even go down that road anymore? Here's what it's got me so far, right? So there was some resentment, but God was so good to me during the resentment times. It's almost like he was, I don't know, man, I'm a dad and I've got kids. And even when my kids are mad at me and really, really mad at me, I enjoy when they vent. When I give them permission to vent and we have an open room and we do that respectfully with each other.
Right.
You love that, right? Because they're talking and they're being real and they're being raw with you.
Right.
And I felt like the resentful times that I was always taught in the past, don't be that way towards God. Well, whenever the rubber met the road and I was that way with God, I felt like it drew me closer to him,
right,
than just holding off and trying to be proper about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, because I think we've all had those moments of you kind of stand outside and you're not really so much you throw your fist up in the air and like, just how could you do this to me? But just, even if it's in prayer of, God, I don't understand this. Why is this happening? And sometimes, like you said, it's that venting just to get it out of your system because, as we've learned, the more you bottle it in, it just adds and adds and adds. It's kind of like that boiling kettle that over time the lid's going to pop. And it's worse when it pops when you take everything in and let it just build up. Whereas if you just kind of let that little pressure relief valve go every once in a while, it releases some of that pressure. So you're not dealing with a lot of that.
That's so good. But you have to be confident enough in yourself that you're not afraid for people to see that, hey, I am just as weak as the next person.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Because like I said, a lot of us, we want to hide behind these images. And for me, I've used this analogy in times of, I think, especially for men, we like to hide behind different masks of, I have this mask when I'm at work. I have a mask when I'm with my wife. I have a mask when I'm with my kids and the whole family. I have a mask when I'm with my friends. And then I have this mask when I'm alone. And they're not, and none of them are the same. And that's the problem is, they're different masks because what are we hiding? Again, it's that part of being transparent and authentic. Are we willing to be that way with everybody at all times? I know there's times you can't just tell your whole business, but again, allowing, like we've said, that identity of Christ shining through you, that people see that image of Christ in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes in being genuine and transparent, man. I mean, none of us could, right? Jesus would have no need to have come if we could do this ourselves. Right. So we have to have him for that. Now that I am in training full time and I run an academy, the base of the academy is here in Fort Worth, Texas, but we're an international school. We get a whole lot of students from across the globe, all different parts of South and North America and Australia, man, you name it. And what I'm really trying to do, so what I took a lot of the points out of the Dr. Cole curriculum and developed what I called the 6 pillars of professional firefighters. And basically what it is character traits. And so what we do here is we try to implement that piece during the entire academy to where our instructors can demonstrate what it looks like to be that person. Because for me, man, I try to tell all these young guys, if you allow your identity to become completely wrapped up in this thing, you will lose yourself. And a lot of the problems we have today, I believe, when it comes to the suicide rates, and they're remarkable right now in our industry. They're number one leading cause of death. And a lot of that, I believe, is coming from a lack of identity, knowing who we are, knowing what we are, knowing what our purpose is. Because when all that explodes one day, when we get close to the end of this thing and we're like, hey, none of that was what I thought it was, well, there's got to be something to fall back on, man.
Right. Oh, yeah. Definitely, like you said, and it's great that you're incorporating a lot of that into training that next generation of firefighters. And so I guess that's kind of where we're going to transition to next is now that you, like you said, you've started this now. You started a training academy for firefighters, and it's international. But there's something really unique about your training school. It is one of the only ones that is privately owned. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that is. Don't ask me how, because I have no idea. I mean, you know as well as I do when it comes to local government, state, federal government. I mean, normally for-profit businesses they're not allowed to intermingle and mix, but we've had such favor, man. God has had such favor on us. We are actually the number one academy in North America right now for this style of training. We were the first ones to come up with a little bit of a different concept, and I believe it was all a God vision. But we put all the classroom online to where a student could do it from anywhere in the world. And then they come to our facility and they actually live the lifestyle of a firefighter, doing all the hands-on, all of the even station duties, everything from sweeping a floor to making a bed. They do all that for a period of time until they graduate. But it's attracted guys and girls from all over the world. So we're just going to keep trucking along. I wish I had answers for a lot of how we're doing it, but it's been favor, man.
Yeah, no, I understand. And now, because I know in some of our conversations past now, are there other universities or anything that you are having like you're associated with as well with the academy?
Yeah, actually we do. We have different colleges locally that we work with. We have 9 different high schools that we're in right now, locally in Texas. There has been some other universities that have took on our method of teaching and our platform and replicated it somewhat. So it is expanding the style of training, but we are associated with several different local places as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so again, you're again offering degrees and just certification in different areas, compared to being certified as a firefighter, and I guess even towards as an EMT and all that. And then, of course, you do other courses like with, I guess, company officer and inspector, fire inspectors and all that as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So we do the certification process from the basic level, someone walking in the door. We're contracted with a lot of cities that will send them to us directly, like they will hire a firefighter, send them here. We also take individuals that are seeking to get on the basic level all the way through your career development, man. We do company officer training, inspector, investigator, all that good stuff.
And that's great. And like you said, that was just something that God put on your heart to take to the next level. And again, like you said, you're just not seeing how God, just having that favor with God that he's been blessing you and open those doors with that. And that's great.
He gave us a vision, and he told me, as long as you stick to the vision, he'll take care of the rest. And he has. And the vision came out of Proverbs 9:1. It said that it says that wisdom has built her house and honed out her 7 pillars. And I never really knew exactly what that meant for almost an entire year. I had to really just seek God on that. But he started to unfold the pillars for me. And what I did is from class 1, we're on class 288 right now for our recruit training.
Wow.
And from class 1, I've asked them when they come in, if you could describe a firefighter by only using one word, what would it be? And so I got a lot of words that were character traits, right? Character, honor, respect, integrity, things like that. And my point was in the entire exercise is to show someone, you're saying that an entire firefighter, whatever, is this. And what I try to show them is that there's nowhere in this curriculum that's going to teach you to be a man of honor, a man of integrity. This is something that's going to have to come from within you. Well, what happened was I started getting a lot of these same words. So I built the 6 pillars of professional firefighters out of that. But here's the cool thing is those pillars are character, honor, respect, integrity, service, and teamwork. And so as I'm going through the class with them and I put them on the board and list them and all that, one day, this was about class 51 or so, a kid said, "Hey, did you know that the first letter of all those spelled Christ?" And at the time, I had no idea, man. I said, "You know what? You're right." So I started asking God, "What does this mean?" And he showed me one time in a building construction class I was taking. He said there was this certain type of structure that had 6 pillars on the exterior walls. And it had one main pillar in the very center of the structure. And that was basically the foundation.
Right.
And God showed me that you can have these character traits and they are necessary and they will help keep the establishment sound. But if you ever lose the foundation, there's no reason for any of it. That type of structure, if anything happened to that middle pillar, then they would condemn the entire home. And that's the same with our life. We can be men of honor without Jesus and it won't work. We can have Jesus and be without honor and it won't work. It all has to encompass as one. And so that's the vision God gave me for the academy. Really.
That's great. And just to see how God is using that and working through that and just, again, that's great. I love it, Mick. And again, I love the time that we've been able to talk and share and just hear your testimony and your story. Now, if anybody is looking to kind of get involved with the fire department or with all that, what is the website for your training school?
Yeah, it's real easy, man. Trainingdivision.com.
Okay.
Yep. Trainingdivision.com, man. You go there and I promise you it'll take you to the right spot.
Okay. Yeah. And I will include that website in a link in our notes. So if anybody is looking for it, they can just click on it and take them straight to it. Again, Mick, I appreciate it. And again, I love the time when we get together, especially at the Lions Roar conferences and just being able to fellowship and bounce stuff off each other of what's going on and just the dreams that each of us have had with ministry and work. And, I just appreciate that friendship that we've developed over the years. And I consider you a true brother in Christ, a brother on the job and a great friend.
Thanks, bud. I do too, man.
So, if there's anything that you would like to say, just to share, you're more than welcome at this time.
Man, Ryan, the only thing I would leave us all with is spend that time to know who you are, man. If there's any doubt, God is so faithful and he's such a good dad. If there's any doubt in your mind, or if you're struggling at all, man, if you're struggling at all with who am I? What is the purpose in life? What am I even here for? Just ask him. He is so faithful to tell you and let you know, and he'll walk you through it, man, just like he did me.
Right. Amen. Again, Mick, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and sharing your story. And again, I just want to encourage you and to tell you to have a blessed and wonderful day.
Thanks, buddy.
Wow, what a powerful and amazing testimony from Mick Moffitt. I hope you took something from that in this episode, especially on that, knowing what your identity is. It's not in the things that you do or what you possess, but finding that true identity in who Christ says you are. So guys, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast today. And remember, if you can, to like, subscribe, and even share this podcast with other guys so that they can be blessed. Again, I appreciate all that you've done to listen. And again, guys, have a blessed and wonderful day.
Thank you for joining on this adventure of integrity and honor in godly masculinity. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with other men. And remember to keep building faithful men.